November 1942. A German officer moves through the fog-soaked streets of Copenhagen, boots clicking on wet cobblestones, collar up against the cold, completely at ease. He never hears the shot. He never sees it coming. One moment he's walking. The next, he's crumpled on the street. And his killer is already 4 blocks away. The weapon slipped back into a coat sleeve like it was never there at all. What ended that man's life didn't look like a gun. It looked like a piece of pipe torn from a factory wall. No trigger guard. No polished steel. No craftsmanship. Just a dull, industrial cylinder that the British military had the nerve to call a pistol. But here's the thing. It made no sound. And in occupied Europe, where one wrong noise meant death, that made it the single most dangerous weapon on the continent. This is the story of the Welrod pistol. The ugly, silent, ruthless little weapon that the Nazis never saw coming and never figured out how to stop. If you're new here, hit subscribe right now. We go deep on the weapons that changed history, and this one is unlike anything you've heard before. By late 1941, Winston Churchill had handed the Special Operations Executive, the SOE, a mission as simple as it was terrifying: set Europe ablaze. Agents were being smuggled across borders in the dead of night. Resistance networks were forming in cellars and back rooms from Paris to Oslo. Sabotage operations were being planned in whispers. The underground war was alive. But there was a gap that could get every single one of those agents killed. When an SOE operative needed to quietly remove a target, a sadistic occupation commander, a Gestapo officer with too many names in his notebook, a collaborator bleeding information to the Germans, the options were almost laughably primitive. Knives meant close contact. Garrotes required strength and luck. Poison was slow and wildly unpredictable. They needed a gun. But not just any gun. The suppressed Sten gun, Britain's best silenced weapon at the time, still produced around 135 decibels. The sound of a jackhammer. Suppressors fitted to standard pistols brought that down to roughly 120 decibels, still clearly audible through walls, across a street, by anyone within 60 meters. What Churchill's agents needed had never been built before. A weapon silent enough to fire in a crowded room without turning a single head. Reliable enough to never jam at the moment it mattered most. Small enough to disappear inside a coat. The engineers at Whitehall called the specification nearly impossible. A small team at Station 9 decided to build it anyway. The Inter-Services Research Bureau, Station 9, sat quietly in Welwyn Garden City, north of London. Most people who passed it had no idea what went on inside. Lead designer Major Hugh Reeves and a tight circle of engineers, most of their names still buried under decades of official secrecy, got to work. They didn't think like gunsmiths. They thought like acoustic engineers. A gunshot has 3 distinct noise sources. The explosion of gases escaping the muzzle. The supersonic crack of the bullet breaking the sound barrier. The mechanical clatter of the weapon cycling. Eliminate all 3, and you have silence. Problem 1. The bullet itself. Standard 9mm ammunition travels at around 360 meters per second, comfortably above the speed of sound. Every shot, no matter how well the gases were contained, would produce a sonic crack that carried for hundreds of meters. The fix was elegant: reduce the powder charge. Drop muzzle velocity to around 295 meters per second. Subsonic. No crack. Silent in flight. Problem 2. Mechanical noise. Every semi-automatic pistol is a noisy machine. Slides cycling, cases ejecting, new rounds slamming into chambers. The Welrod cut all of that out entirely. Instead of a self-loading action, it used a manual bolt. The shooter twisted and pulled a knurled knob at the rear of the weapon to eject the spent case and chamber the next round. Slow, yes, but nearly completely silent. Problem 3. The gases. This is where Reeves and his team did something nobody had done before. They didn't design a suppressor to attach to the weapon. They designed the suppressor to be the weapon. The entire front 2/3 of the Welrod, roughly 9 inches of its total length, was a precision-engineered series of baffles and expansion chambers. When the weapon fired, propellant gases entered this labyrinth and spread through multiple chambers, cooling and losing energy at each stage before silently bleeding out into the open air. The numbers speak for themselves. A standard 9mm pistol at the muzzle, 165 decibels. Enough to rupture an eardrum. Enough to be heard from half a kilometer away. The Welrod at the muzzle, 73 decibels. The sound of a car door closing. At 10 meters, it dropped even further, lost entirely in the background noise of a city street, a busy cafe, a crowded train station. The finished well rod stretched just over 14 inches from end to end. The grip was a rubber-wrapped tube, functional, ugly, hiding an 8-round magazine in its later versions. The barrel protruded forward-looking, to any casual glance, like a section of ordinary pipe. There was no trigger guard, just a small curved trigger tucked beneath the body. Sights were minimal, a front blade, a rear notch, because the well rod was never designed for distance work. Effective range, around 25 meters. Optimal range was much shorter, across a small room, down a narrow corridor, pressed directly against a target in a stairwell. At those distances, marksmanship was irrelevant. Silence was the only thing that mattered. And silence, this weapon delivered in ways that surpassed every expectation its designers had. Production began in late 1942. The exact figures remain classified, but credible estimates suggest somewhere between 3,000 and 15,000 units were built before the war ended. Serial numbers were deliberately scattered to prevent anyone from calculating totals. Most records were destroyed. The British government wanted this weapon to remain a ghost. By early 1943, well rods were arriving across occupied Europe, slipped out of aircraft in sealed canisters, passed hand to hand through resistance networks operating in the dark. The weapon earned its reputation fast. In France, the Maquis used it for what they quietly called executive actions. German officers known for targeting civilians had an unsettling tendency to die without a sound. Collaborators who had fed names to the Gestapo stopped talking permanently. One account describes a Maquis operative eliminating a target inside a packed Paris cafe in the middle of the afternoon. He walked calmly through the room afterward. Nobody looked up. Nobody flinched. The body wasn't discovered until the lunch crowd began to thin. In Denmark, the Holger Dansk resistance group deployed well rods against Danish Nazi officials, Gestapo informants, and German intelligence officers, in busy urban neighborhoods, in full daylight, in circumstances where any louder weapon would have been a death sentence for the shooter. In Norway, well rods allowed SOE sabotage teams to silently remove guards at critical infrastructure sites without triggering alarms, buying the seconds needed to place charges and disappear before anyone knew something was wrong. The psychological effect on German occupation forces was something nobody had fully anticipated. Officers began to realize something deeply unsettling. A quiet room was not a safe room. The absence of gunfire was not the absence of danger. Death could arrive without warning, without sound, without the fraction of a second needed to call for help. Recruiting informants became harder. Who would risk betraying the resistance when betrayal might mean a silent bullet? No drama, no noise, no last moment to scream. Germany had suppressed weapons too. The Walther PPK with a screw-on suppressor could achieve around 115 decibels, quieter than standard, but still unmistakably a gunshot to anyone within range. German suppressor design was built around concealing sniper positions, not enabling assassination in crowds. The Americans fielded the HDM, High Standard Model D, a suppressed .22 caliber pistol issued to the OSS. Impressively quiet at around 90 decibels, but the .22 round was underpowered. Multiple shots were regularly needed to guarantee a kill, and penetration through heavy winter clothing was unreliable at best. The well rod hit 73 decibels with a 9mm round, enough power to end the job with a single shot. Every time. In the brutal math of silent warfare, nothing else came close. Before we wrap, drop a comment and tell us where in the world you're watching from. Seriously, our viewers come from places that genuinely surprise us every single time. If this video earned your respect, hit the like button. It takes 2 seconds, and it means more than you know. Subscribe if you want more deep dives into the weapons that quietly shaped history. And stay with us, because the next one goes even deeper. The well rod never fired a single shot on a conventional battlefield. It didn't need to. Its battlefield was a foggy street in Copenhagen, a sunlit cafe in Paris, a dark corridor in Oslo, and when it spoke, nobody heard a thing.